they are busy filter feeding, which is one of the reasons that they're important.
Can you eat these oysters?
You could, but they wouldn't be very good because they're small, and as they're filtering water, they filter a lot of the sediment, the tiny muddy sediment out of the water. Shellfish are actually all protected in the reserve. You're not allowed to keep live shellfish in the reserve anyhow. But we were talking about the Calusa, for sure. The Calusa ate oysters and then used the shells to build their mounds. Calusa are a civilization that lived here for about 2,300 years, from 500 BC until 1700 AD. And they built, as you've noticed, there's no real land out here. You couldn't get out of your kayak and walk around on one of these islands, could you? Well, this would be a hard place to live. So they harvested mollusks and built mounds and lived on top of the shell mounds here. So, yeah, this is the same species of oysters that grows all the way up into Chesapeake Bay. They tend to be bigger and tastier and not as muddy up there, though. The way oysters grow, they grow attached to each other and they form reefs. And so it leaves a lot of little hiding places in between each individual animal. A perfect place to live. And just in the short time that I've had this little batch of oysters out of the water, 2 little crabs have jumped out. And there's a little shrimpy, kind of a shrimpy thing. Actually, maybe 3 crabs. These are called porcelain crabs.
Wow.
There are actually 300 species of animals that make their homes hiding in an oyster reef at some time of their life. So these are a very important habitat. Goliath grouper hide in here, stone crabs hide in here, all kinds of fish. You know, if you're a teeny tiny little animal and you want to survive to adulthood, you need a place to hide, and all of these oyster reefs are perfect.
Where's the shrimp?
It's really small. Let me take this and I want you to cut yourself on it. It looks like a big
Mm-hmm. I saw them. 2 crabs. That's a big one.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the little shrimpy thing. These crabs, these are called porcelain crabs because their defense strategy, if they're feeling threatened by a predator, is to just break off a claw, and then the claw's sitting there twitching, and the predator eats that claw, and then the crab crawls back in here and grows a new one. It's a pretty good strategy.
Oh, wow.
So porcelain, like fine china. So that's one reason that oysters are important. Another reason that they're important is, do you mind holding here? Thank you. Is that this is where the mangrove islands tend to grow. Maybe you've seen one of these before. This is the reproductive structure for the red mangrove tree. And they fall from the tree and they float horizontally for a while. And then the brown end takes on more water than the other end. And then they start to float vertically for a while. The current and the wind can transport them a long way. And if they find a suitable habitat to get stuck in, like an oyster reef, ta-da, you have a brand new mangrove island. So everywhere around here that you see a mangrove island, you know there was probably an oyster reef there first. This provides a good substrate.
This was just covered with oysters.
Yeah. And then the mangroves get stuck in here. And then they start.
Can they get stuck other places too, or does it have to be like
They can.
Okay.
If it's a real quiet environment, they could get stuck on a mud flat. Or if they fall from the parent tree and end up spearing the ground right under them, and that's a good place, then they might just grow right there. But if they end up adrift, you know, they're not going to get stuck on the beach. It's too sandy and there's too many waves, and they won't get stuck out here. There's too much current and the mud's flat. So, you know, they need the right place to grow, and an oyster reef usually works out to be a good place to grow. So we talked about habitat, we talked about mangroves, and then another reason that these are very important is that the way that they get their food is by filtering water. So they are very important at keeping the water clean. And each one of these oysters will filter at least 25 gallons of water a day, which is shocking.
A day, wow.
They can filter up to 50 gallons of water a day. So they're a very important part of the ecosystem. We're lucky that we have good, healthy oyster reefs here.